Greetings. Captain Kronos here, formerly of the Imperial Guard. Vampire slaying is my trade. Betting wenches is just a bit of fun in between. Greetings, folks. Mwah. And today we're going to discuss Hammer's absolute glorified genre mix-up, spaghetti western, sword swashbuckling, piracy and horror with vampires. The typical Hammer films stock in trade. Early to mid 70s, it was the demise of Hammer films, and they couldn't compete with what was coming out of America. Things like Night of the Living Dead and The Exorcist had really, Texas Chainsaw Massacre had changed the landscape of horror considerably, and Hammer Studios' quaint old gothic, studio bound, and typically just Bray Forest was always the exterior location. The Kensington gore, the buckets of blood, these were like, they'd had their day. I love them, and now everyone goes back to the Hammer films as being an absolute zeitgeist of horror. But they were on their last legs, their dying throes. So to try and shake things up a bit, they had sought to radicalise their stories and films, upping the sexuality, upping the gore and the violence. Even then they couldn't compete. So they sought to try to, reinvent themselves with a far more sophisticated, extravagant storytelling. And to this end, they brought the guy that created the Avengers. Not Thor and Captain America, not those guys. John Steed and Diana Rigg in the 60s. And this was a fellow called Brian Clemens, who was he co-wrote and produced the original Avengers series. He would then go on to actually direct and write the new Avengers with Gambit and of course Joanna Lumley as Purdy. So, but as far as Hammer were concerned, they brought him in to. He worked and directed. His directorial debut on a feature film would be Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, which was a great sort of switcheroo on the original story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And this was a kind of bizarre concept. Ralph Bates as Dr. Jekyll takes the potion and turns into Martine Beswick. Still goes on a rather ludicrous knife bloodletting frenzy, but lots of lesbian hints and masturbatory hints to it as well. It was a strange concept, but hey, moderately successful. A bit outrageous, and definitely a break from the mould. And then they came to Captain Kronos, Vampire Hunter. And the genesis of this story is that, Kronos, as some of you may know, is a Greek word meaning time. So the concept was going to be that Captain Kronos, this guy who had fought in many wars, come home and discovered his mother and his sister have been vampirized while he's been away, and his sister even puts the bite on him and he's forced to kill them. He survives by the power of his faith, the vampire's bite, but then swears a lifelong determination to wipe this scourge from the planet. So the pitch was going to be that you see Captain Kronos appearing in different time periods, different eras, battling vampires and maybe even other creatures from the nightmare realms. And this never happened because the film really wasn't well received at the time. It's since gone on to become the genre classic that it profoundly is. Again, this is another film that I absolutely adore, and I really adore every minute of this. You can hear the score playing behind me, and it's rollicking main theme for Captain Kronos, and he's played by German actor Horst Janssen, who had an uncanny resemblance to tennis superstar Bjorn Borg. But sadly, in their infinite lack of wisdom, Hammer producers decided that he had all too much of a Germanic accent, although he spoke English perfectly well and he was a well-established actor by this time. So they brought in a guy called Julian Holloway to overdub him. Now this is the son of the actor Stanley Holloway, and it's kind of a bizarre thing because this guy comes in archly English but he puts on a German accent. That wouldn't be so bad, but it's almost, the dubbing process isn't particularly effective because it's almost like Horst Janssen is speaking with an amp inside his mouth, and his voice booms above everybody else's, and it's kind of, weird. But if you're into, spaghetti westerns, of which this is very, very similar, in theme, Roxy the dog has just entered the room, folks. Hello, love. Hello. We're talking vampires. Vampires, yes. Don't know if you can see it, but she's down there. Anyway. And she just sneezed. And again. Got to steal the show, these bloody huskies, haven't they? Bravo. Where was I? Yes, Germanic accents. So if you into your overdub movies, your Italian spaghetti westerns and all that, then this is par for the course for you. But this is an English film, and it's by Hammer Studios. You don't really expect it here, but you get it anyway. So the story of this absolutely classic movie. Wherever we are, it could be Eastern Europe, it could be rural France. We don't know where you are because it's not. You don't even know the time period you're in. It looks like 17th century. There's no guns, it's all swords, which is wonderful because yours truly is a massive big swords buff. And he's been called to this village by his old war buddy Marcus, played by John Carson, who was also in Hammer's The Plague of the Zombies as this voodoo landowner who recruits all the villagers as zombies to work in his tin mines. Well, people have been getting vampirized in this little rural enclave, but not in a conventional way. They're not drained of blood, they're drained of life itself, youth and vitality. Young girls, and you see all this, some hooded figure approaches these girls in the woods, picking flowers or combing their hair or whatever they do in the woods those days. And they approach and they get mesmerised by whatever this thing in his hooded cloak is. It mesmerises them and they go, ah. And then cuts away. Next time you see them, they're a withered old hag with a bit of blood on the lips. And so Dr. Marcus knows his old friend from the wartime is a bit of a specialist in this field. So he summons him. So dun 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 comes riding in, and he has his buddy, who's a hunchbacked Professor Hieronymus Grost, played by Michael Caton, and he's wonderful. If Captain Kronos is James Bond, Grost is Q to him because he gives him all the weaponry and the techniques and the know-how to slay these blood and youth suckers. So they arrive. More mayhem ensues. They encounter Caroline Munro as Carla the Gypsy. Voluptuous. Those eyes, those shoulders, that gorgeous hair. She was the Lamb's Navy rum girl, and of course she's a horror scream queen icon as well. And she's absolutely terrific in this movie. They encounter her, she's in the stocks at the side of the street, and she's been pelted with fruit and veg, and all sorts of things like that. I think people would be taking advantage in another way if she was like who the stocks, with her bum sticking out. But hey, got to be punished somehow. And what did you do? What is your crime, girl? Speak. I danced on a Sunday. Sword comes out, whoosh, and he cuts her free. Whereupon she gets on the back of the wagon that Grost is driving, and the threesome, it's a trio now, head down to Dr. Marcus to find out what's going on. And so Marcus tells them, you're introduced to other characters as well. You've got the Darewoods, which is there's always this noble house just beyond the woods, and it's a brother and sister. Shane Bryant plays the son, the brother, and I forget the name of the girl who plays the sister, but very nice she is too. And they have a very aging old crone of a mother who's harbouring a bit of a grudge because her husband, who, get this, Hagen was his name, was a master swordsman in his lifetime. No one could beat him. And but he died of the pox. He died in the arms of Dr. Marcos, which of course is Kronos' Betty buddy. So a bit of bitterness there. Marcus keeps trying to, make amends, but she won't. Forget it, Doctor. She won't see you. But it wasn't my fault. The pox, I couldn't stop it. She doesn't care about that. He died in your arms, and she'll forever, hate you for it. And yet he still visits the house from time to time because he gets on really well with the sister. Anyway, so you've got you're already set up. You know these women are being drained of their youth and vitality, and they're dying as wizened old crones, wretched hag carcasses on the deck. And one poor family seems to lose every girl in the family seems to get slain by this mysterious hooded creature. So you kind of know the finger of suspicion is pointing very definitely at the Darewood house. You've got an aging crone who you only see in the back of the carriage with this face and long hair. No, don't come near me, Anne. Your suspectometer is going, methinks you. Or maybe it's the brother and sister because they're beautifully young and vibrant and so seemingly innocent. In a Hammer movie, nobody is totally innocent. So anyway, because they start sniffing around and laying traps in the woods, Grost has these fabulous little tricks up his sleeve. If you put a dead toad in a box and put it under the ground, should a vampire pass that way, go back to the box, the toad has miraculously sprung back to life. Ribbit, and why would that be? But anyway, it makes for a nice little trick when they're camped in the woods, and they set these sort of these little tingly bells with red ribbon throughout all the trees, so they'll know when someone's approaching. Bright red ribbon and bells, and seemingly, victims and suspects just wander through and don't even notice these bells and bright red ribbons. That's as bad as the day for night shooting as well, which Hammer was, they weren't particularly blessed with their day for night shooting, were they? But hey, it's of its time, and what does it matter? It doesn't matter. Victims mount up. Kronos and Grost get a bit closer to the, what's happening. They're making a name for themselves in the village, and they're not liked. So the Darewoods employ some rather aggressive ne'er-do-wells in the local tavern. Should Kronos and his hunchbacked friend, arrive, make their lives a misery, make them turn and flee. Here's a bag of coins for you, ruffian. So, Ian Hendry, the great British booze hound, Ian Hendry, who was told, please, this is a good part for you, don't drink, please, just do your best and don't drink. And director Brian Clemens, on day one of the I think the 3 or 4 days of shooting that Ian Hendry did on the movie, arrived in his trailer, and Ian Hendry's got a pint of lager in his hand, and he said, you said you weren't going to drink. And he was like, this is lager, this isn't drinking. Glug, 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 glug. And he plays Kero, who's this the leader of this trio of bastards really, and these are straight out of Sergio Leone. This tavern, spittoons there, there's a blind girl playing cards, in the corner, and these guys are to put the frighteners on our heroes, obviously, but of course, and it's with swords. Ian Hendry's already threatened some guy, made him run and flee, and then our boys turn up. The tavern keeper has a wagon passed here lately, and some of your best red wine, and they start insulting, our heroes, these three, and they start picking on Grost because he's a hunchback, and they call him Crookback, and not very nice, but he's a man of honour, is our Kronos, and he turns around and he says, I don't think it's funny, insulting my friend. It's not big, it's not clever. What if I started calling you names? Like you, Ratface, and you, Fatty, and you, Big Mouth. Not exactly the most intimidating of name calling, is it? But hey, gets the point across. So you got the tense standoff, the pure Leone, Clint Eastwood, man with no name, Lee Van Cleef, sort of standoff taking place. The eyes, a hand goes near to the sword hilt, and it's in a brilliant bit of economic sort of filming, you just see Horse Jansen go a quick whoosh, whoosh, two sides, whoosh, blood, pa, pa, blood, and his sword, which is a katana, a samurai sword. He's got several swords, but he uses a katana as well, which is, you haven't seen much of that in these films at that sort of period. You see it back in the sheath, whoosh, all in one quick shot, and then it cuts back to the three of these bastards, and the two either side of Kero just go fall either side like that, leaving Kero standing in the middle. So you're waiting, what's Kero going to do? And Kero's got a sword out, almost at Kronos' throat, and he just goes, drops the sword, and does a big sort of theatrical Shakespeare, falls one way then the other, and then he's down. And it's great because it's comically done, you know. There's another fight because you know they're not very popular, our boys in this neck of the woods, causing trouble everywhere they go. And at the cemetery where Lord Darewood, this master swordsman who died in Dr. Marcus's arms, there's a big statue above him of him standing there, you know, master swordsman Hagen Darewood, and his grave's there, and it's on a hillside, and a bunch attack. And what they're doing, they're taking the crucifix down. I'll go into that later on, but a big fight ensues, and he's got a katana and he's got a saber, and he basically disarms everybody. He doesn't kill anyone there. He disarms them all and injures them, and it's a wonderful bit of sword play, a wonderful bit of choreography, and a nice bit of nifty filming as well. Now, let's get back to the main plot. That's my dog growling. You get bored of these stories, don't you? Eh? Anyway. Now, during one of these little nocturnal leaving the traps out, poor old Dr. Marcus has fallen foul of the hooded figure as well. Although in a great shot, again, the hooded figure appears to him. It seems to be saying his name. He thinks it's the girl, the sister from the Darewoods. And, shut up. And he goes over, and time freezes. You see a stream stop mid-flow. The trees that are blowing in the wind stop, and lightning strikes. And then, in a split second later, the stream resumes. The trees start shaking again. It's just freeze frames, but it's a nice little touch. And he carries on, not sure what's just happened. Later on, it's him who will kill another girl, and then we realise, ah, shit, you're a vampire. Gross has already informed us there's different types of vampires. There's many types of vampires in the world as there are living animals in species. Some feed on this, some feed on that, some usually feed on blood, but these particular ones are feeding on youth. And but Marcus is a bloodsucker. He turned into a friggin' bat, and he's nibbled the face off this poor girl. So there's a different one again. And this is a great sort of out there and darkly humorous sequence, because they've got to kill him, and so bloody Marcus called them in to help, and he ends up having to be slain by them. Dog, shush. You know, and you're not in the script for this one. So they they tie him down, and they've got a stake, ram it through his chest. Doesn't do the trick. Just pull the stake out. Not seen any blood on it either. And then they try hanging him. Does no good either. And you're like, oh God, this is getting a bit sick, this. What are you going to do next? Gross threatens him with flames, and he does recoil from the flames, so you think, oh, they're gonna burn him. But he's still tied into this chair, so he rocks back, and then rocks forward, and Kronos catches him. And suddenly he looks up, and he's withered and old, bit of blood on the lips. Thank you. And they go, so he's died, and the flame didn't touch him. And what's happened is, the crucifix, because the cross doesn't affect these people either, because it's, or it can. It depends. It's that old thing about you've got to have faith for it to work, you know. Fright Night, you've got to have faith for that to work on me, Peter Vincent. And anyway, and it's gone into his heart, the crucifix. So Gross pulls it out, and because it's just steel. So they realise that, okay, if we're going to slay these vampires, let's make swords out of a big crucifix. Shut up. Fucking dog, you know. No, it's not funny now. Bugger off. You can't even see it, can you? It's really annoying me now. So off they go to the cemetery. That fight sequence in the cemetery, but they're taking down the great big crucifix made out of steel. And in a nice forged for fire moment, Grost will construct and forge a new sword for Kronos, forged out of this steel crucifix. And a wonderful sword it is too. So this is what he's going to confront them with. And let's just go back to Caroline Munro again, because on the page it's a thankless task. She's just there to, for us to go, whoa, look at her, she's fit, wow, and for Kronos to make love to as much as is humanly possible, and in the barn and on the back of the wagon and wherever he can, But Caroline Munro really gets her pardon the expression, gets her teeth into this role, and on the page there's not much there, but she gives it so much warmth and sensuality and a sense of humour as well. And there's some great shots to it happens a few times. You'll see Kronos sitting by a tree, and the bells will that traps with the bells will ring, and Caroline Munro as Carla the gypsy is leaning next to him, swooning like that, and next thing the bells will ring and he springs into action, but he's moved that fast that she's gone, oh, and she's on the floor and he's half a mile away. And there's a great sequence again where Grost is forging this sword, and in the background you can see Kronos sitting meditating like this with a bag over his head. And Carla again is leaning on him, and Grost goes, takes the sword out. Let's do it. It looks not too dissimilar from this. Gets the sword out and goes, admires his handiwork. Kronos! And next thing you see is poor Carla go, whoa! On the floor again, because he's just moving lightning fast, abilities and speed, and it's just really funny. They will use Carla as bait. They've now pieced it together. It definitely is the Darewoods somehow, but they're assuming it's the brother and sister, or one or the other, or both, who knows. So they knock on the door, and Carla is lying there unconscious. So Shane Bryant, playing the son, the brother, picks up, brings her in, wakes her up, and she's bait, basically. They're going to use her to lure in, whichever one is the vampire, and they're going to break into this mansion house and obviously do battle with it. But of course, I bet you guys, even if you haven't seen it, are way ahead of me on this one. Remember that wizened old crone in the back of the coach, Lady Darewood, played by Wanda Ventham, another voluptuous, celebrity at that time. I think she was in the TV show UFO as well, and but she's a familiar face for people who are of a certain age who watch a lot of British TV. You'd see her a lot. Very nice she is too. And, obviously, she's been wearing a mask the whole time. And she's really beautiful underneath, but because she's been draining the life and energy and beauty and youthful vitality out of all these victims, and so she starts to move in on Carla, and she's got the mesmerist there, like this, and Carla is rooted to the spot. But of course, what's going to happen next? The kids are going to suss on something's happening, and she turns around and she says to them, because they didn't know. The brother and sister actually are totally innocent. They had no idea that their mum was a ravening, vampirical fiend. And she's saying, well, why shouldn't I have eternal life? Why shouldn't I? I am a Karnstein after all. Karnstein? Any, Hammer fans out there will know that the Karnsteins ruled the vampire hierarchy after Dracula in a lot of their movies. Carmilla Karnstein particularly, who was played by Ingrid Pitt once, and then Ute Stensgaard. Yes, a lot of us remember her, don't we, boys? And so they're carrying it on. It's a nice little passing of the bloody baton to another family, the Darewoods, and she says, well, but Father wouldn't approve. Father's dead. No, Father isn't dead. I brought him back. I revived him. Oh, bloody hell. So the Master Swordsman, he's a bloodsucker too. He's been going out there taking some of these victims at the same time. He arrives, takes the hood down, and he's got all these pox marks on his face. And he's played by a guy called, I think it's William Hobbs, and this guy, incidentally, was a fight choreographer, a master swordsman in real life. That's why they brought him in, and he choreographed the fights for Roman Polanski's Macbeth. He did Ridley Scott's The Duelists, and Rob Roy. The Duelists and Rob Roy both have the honour of being recognised as having some of the best, most realistic sword fights ever put on film. And it's thanks to this guy. And is that going to pay dividends in a few minutes? Because Captain Kronos enters the fray. You know. In the meantime, Lady Darewood, Carla has been hypnotised. The brother and sister, have been hypnotised like statues there. She then turns on Kronos, and Grost has given him a little secret weapon. On the this bit is called the ricasso, and what he's done, he's given him a little piece of mirrored silver to go down onto that. So when Lady Darewood puts the stare on Kronos, he goes and turns the blade round, so she stares into her own reflection. And in a neat little, homage to Perseus and Medusa, the Gorgon. Remember, Perseus had a mirrored, what do you call it? Shield, that's it, yeah. Turns that on Medusa, and she turns to stone because she sees her own reflection. Well, he reverses the mesmer stare, and like Lady Darewood, she's booted to the spot as well. So now we've got 4 human statues around here, but you've also got Hagen, Lord Darewood, Master Swordsman, and now Undead Vampire. And of course, you get the great big sword fight now. And man, it's a fucking doozy. This is awesome. Because you've got this great guy choreographing it and doing it as well. There's a lot of ting, 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 whoosh, whoosh, duck, whoosh, and it goes all the way around this great big set. They fight along the tables, but they're missing these human statues every time. It's a really nice little trick to have this, this placement of bodies around. And Hagen does this wonderful manoeuvre. I can't reenact it here because there's no damn room. And I'll probably fuck it up and skew myself with the sword anyway. Like that. And he spins around and does it round the back, like that, parrying all these shots. And it's, it's brilliant for its time. Quentin Tarantino, loves this movie. And he, Kill Bill was a nice sort of homage to it in many ways. And he has cited this fight sequence as being, one of the ones he loves most. And it's just tremendous stuff. How's it going to pan out in the end? Because inevitably, Hagen gets the better of our boy, whose sword gets stuck in the table, and he gets driven up the steps. And Hagen is advancing on him to music very similar to this. And there's a sword on a wall behind him. So quickly, Kronos grabs that sword and runs him through. But of course, that's just a normal sword. And Hagen just goes, "You can't kill me, Kronos." Grost to the rescue. Comes down the stairs, rips the sword, the proper sword, out of the table. Kronos! Kronos catches it, takes him down. Withered and old. And in a nice little shot. Whoa, quick, this would call it quick shot. Cuts to Wanda Bentham, Lady Darewood, with a tear in one eye and blood dripping down the other eye, as she will then die as well. And it's a brilliant story. A lovely, twist on the whole, dyed in the wool, long in the tooth vampire mythos. Bringing in the swashbuckling side, bringing in a great sense of humour, bringing in, this whole kind of crazy, the dog's now chewing my arm off, Do you have to? Come here. Get yourself on camera. Go on. Oh, Jesus. There's a snout here. Anyway, what can I say, folks? What can I say? Huskies, just don't bother with them. I love this movie. This was the first AA for Hammer. Hammer's films had always been Certificate X. But this one, even though there's plenty of violence in it and there's a bit of, nookie taking place, you've got a bit more nudity for Caroline Munro than you'd ever had before, or would ever have since, or would ever get since. And it's done with shadows and stuff, but there's a fair bit of stuff taking place there. But it's a double A, which meant in this country, in the UK, you had to be 14 or above to go and see it. It's full of it brought the age bracket down from the you have to be 18 to see an X, and yet the film did not do well. It combined all these elements, this episodic nature, wonderful photography, brilliant score by Laurie Johnson. Laurie Johnson and Brian Clemens would work together on the Avengers and the New Avengers as well. And Laurie Johnson did a lot of TV scores, but this was a huge, big score for him. It's a brilliant, brilliant score. Very Eastern flavour, Eastern European flavour, with the zimbalom playing, harps and all this sort of stuff. And that rollicking cavalry march for Captain Kronos as the main theme. Where was I going with that? I've gone off on a tangent again. But yeah, it wasn't received well. I think it played second billing on a double bill to, what was it? I think it was Frankenstein, the Monster from Hell, may have been, which was like really the death knell for the Frankenstein saga that Hammer were doing. And this was not the end of Hammer. Hammer would limp on and produce another couple of really absolutely woeful movies. And then you had Satanic Rites of Dracula, but you had The Devil a Daughter. Oh dear God, what an absolute travesty of a film that is. And thankfully the coffin was shut over on Hammer. But this was a stab at creating something different, vibrant, exciting. And the idea was to spin out a cycle of movies with Kronos in different time periods. That never happened. Then there was an idea for making it a TV show, and it's ripe for that. Think Doctor Who with swords and a bit more cleavage and a bit more monsteriness. That never happened, which is such a shame. Now, I know I talked about The Beast Must Die. I'd love to remake that one, and it's ripe for a revamp. This one, Captain Kronos, what better concept have you got than this? A demon battling hero that goes through the ages, different stories, different sagas, different characters as companions. Just awesome. It's tailor-made. You haven't really do much with it. Just set him in like the Wild West, set him in the Orient. Because that's the thing about him. It's a nice little trick. He's got a katana there. It kind of shows that this guy has been around, And let's go back onto the photography as well and the set pieces. Some of these girls, there's one that goes into a church. These are the victims. She goes into a church. Lovely sort of ecclesiastical music plays. And as she walks in and takes a seat at one of the pews, there are shadows on the wall. It's a great big wide shot. And there's a shadow of a big cross on the wall